Michael Tobert from Adams Electric in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
Support for this podcast comes from NRTC. NRTC is member-driven and technology-focused, providing broadband and smart grid solutions to help electric cooperatives bring all of the advantages of today's evolving technology to rural America.
Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. I'm your host, Scott Hoffman. Beneficial electrification, in its simplest form, means using electricity as a power source instead of fossil fuels when it makes sense for the consumer. We've talked about the concept on this podcast in the past, but now we're taking a look at how this idea is spreading throughout the country through a new group called the Beneficial Electrification League. First, we talked to the League's co-chair, Gary Connett, who spent his career at Great River Energy, a generation and transmission co-op in Minnesota. Gary, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay, so just kind of remind our listeners what we mean when we say beneficial electrification.
Well, beneficial electrification is the idea of using electricity where it makes good sense. And where might it make good sense is maybe in electric vehicles or in water heating or in heat pumps. And the reason that this is becoming more important is with the concept of all the renewable energy and clean energy that we're getting in our grid, it's starting to make good sense to use electricity in certain parts of our economy.
And from what I understand, there are basically 4 pillars or 4 criteria for a particular appliance or device to be considered part of a beneficial electrification scheme. Talk about that.
Yeah, sure. You're right, Scott. We call them pillars. And when we started putting together the concept of beneficial electrification, we were thinking to ourselves, what does it have to include? And these pillars, number 1, it needs to save consumers money over time. Number 2, benefits the environment and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And number 3 is improves product quality or consumers' quality of life. And number 4 is fosters a more robust and resilient grid. And our thinking on these is that beneficial electrification application doesn't have to do all 4 of these, but it has to do at least one of these pillars without doing harm to the others. Make sense?
That's great. That's perfect. And now you are part of a group called the Beneficial Electrification League, a fairly new group that basically the mission is to promote this concept of beneficial electrification. Talk about that. What's the broader mission? When did it start? Who's involved?
Well, it has a history that goes back some period of time, particularly with NRECA and the Natural Resources Defense Council, who are 2 of our major sponsors for the Beneficial Electrification League. Goes back a few years, I mentioned. And it goes back to a time where the Department of Energy actually banned the manufacture of large capacity electric resistance water heaters. And NRECA and many distribution co-ops throughout America are really concerned with that ban because distribution co-ops were using those water heaters in demand-side management programs. And it was there that we met with NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, and it became apparent that maybe this DOE ruling was a little too quick to come down the pike. And when they found out that these water heaters were being used in a beneficial way, we tried to get them to change the rules. And it didn't happen through the DOE, but it actually happened, the rule change, with an act of Congress. And it was during that act of Congress and during all these meetings that we had that we developed this partnership with the Natural Resources Defense Council. And it was around grid interactive water heaters of all things. But as we went further along, it became apparent that using electricity smartly, beneficially, had more to do with just water heaters. And we started this concept of beneficial electrification, in 2019. And we held our first meeting in Arlington, Virginia. And it was with a number of stakeholders, if you will, to talk about the concept. And from those meetings, we came up with the League's vision. And the Beneficial Electrification League's vision is for beneficial electrification to be universally accepted as a necessary strategy to meet economic, consumer, and environmental goals. That was our vision. And we came up with a mission at that time, too. And our mission is to increase understanding of the benefits of electrification by promoting the market acceptance of beneficial electrification, to educate policymakers on the value, benefits, and tools of beneficial electrification, and serve as a conduit and facilitator for BE resources.
There used to be the idea that you should just reduce your electricity use in order to help the environment. And that's been sort of the government line for a long time. And, because of new developments with the grid and with renewables, that's changed. So is part of your mission basically to kind of change that common understanding so most people understand that it's okay to use electricity if it's done smartly?
You bet, Scott. I spent my career at a generation and transmission cooperative in Minnesota called Great River Energy. And one of the things that I administered there was the conservation improvement programs or energy efficiency programs that were required by the state, and good programs for our co-ops to offer their members. And energy efficiency, let me make no mistake, energy efficiency is a good thing. But as we are going down this path, in Minnesota was called our Department of Commerce, it became clear that our Department of Commerce was keen on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And as we all should be keen on that, soon our Department of Commerce, who administrated the conservation programs, was really kind of focused on reducing carbon. And it became clearer that reducing carbon could be done while using maybe more electricity. An oxymoron almost. And the idea was if our energy, our electricity was getting cleaner and greener each and every year, it became clear that at some point in time it made more sense to use electricity than fossil fuels. And boy, that's a paradigm shift for so many people. Policymakers, legislators, utilities, energy advocacy groups. It's this notion that using electricity is better for the environment than maybe the alternatives. That's not always been true, that as our energy gets cleaner and greener, it becomes very true. And so there's a whole education process that has to take place around this concept that using electricity can be beneficial to the consumer and beneficial to the climate. And I'll add, too, beneficial to the co-ops. Having been at a G&T for so many years of my life, the last maybe 10 or 15 years, there was a real concern about electric sales and the lack of electric sales. My goodness, for the first time in a couple of decades, there's an opportunity to really encourage electric sales again in certain parts of our economy, electric vehicles, heat pumps, water heating. For the first time in years, co-ops have a reason to market their product and hold it up high. It's clean, it's green, it's efficient, it's the best energy source that one can use.
That's great, Gary. And so bring us up to speed on where the Beneficial Electrification League is right now. You've been adding chapters, you've been having events. Talk about some of the stuff that you're doing to get the word out about this.
We've been hosting a series of statewide or regional meetings. We've started those meetings in Minnesota, and we've gone to Indiana, North Carolina, Iowa, Wisconsin, Colorado. All these states have had an Electrify Minnesota, an Electrify Colorado meeting where we've had well over 100 people in attendance. And these people in attending are utility people, not only co-ops, but investor-owned and municipals, regulators and legislators, energy advocacy groups. We've got everybody in the room, stakeholders that are involved in energy policy. And we talk about this new concept of how you can use electricity in certain end uses that are beneficial, that are smart. And so our mission has really been to just get the word out. We're also looking at research and things in terms of what sort of research is necessary around beneficial electrification. While we don't do the research ourselves, we can help sponsor some of that targeted research and development.
So give me a sense of what this looks like on the ground. If I'm the member of a distribution co-op that has just kind of begun a beneficial electrification program, what kind of things would I expect to see, and what kind of things would the Beneficial Electrification League help them with?
I think for some of the co-ops, it's just right back down to some of the basics. Distribution co-op, while they've always looked at energy efficiency about reducing kilowatt hours, I think now going forward, they can start looking at what is it I can encourage that might grow sales, but actually maybe save consumers money and help the climate. And some of those things that we're encouraging is grid interactiveness, smart thermostats, smart water heaters, smart heat pumps, these sort of things in homes. And as a distribution co-op, or as co-ops in general, we serve a lot of residential homes and less so industrial. And so there's real opportunities to look within a building, a home, and look for what are the things that can be done electrically that may be more efficient and more environmentally friendly. And so we continue to encourage those sort of things. And when we talk to distribution co-ops, we try to get them to really focus on these sort of things that are going to help consumers and help their co-op and help their climate. And one of the other things that they need to understand too is, where's our energy coming from, their electric energy? More and more co-ops across the country, their energy is coming from more clean resources and getting cleaner by the year. And so we try to get them to understand the concept and start to look at how they can market and promote, educate their consumers or their members on this concept of beneficial electrification.
And as far as the movement toward beneficial electrification more broadly, how have co-ops, yourself, NRECA, and the co-ops statewide themselves, how have they fit in? Would you consider them among the originators of this concept? Are they the ones that have been pushing it forward?
They sure have. At these statewide meetings that we have and these regional meetings, it's often the co-ops that are sponsoring these meetings. They're well attended by co-ops. Clearly, they're leading. And it goes back to this history of co-ops having engagement with their members, and some of that engagement has come through demand-side management programs and energy efficiency programs. So this is just kind of a continuation of those sort of programs. But I will say it's exciting, I think, for the distribution co-ops because they can encourage, they can promote using electricity, and it's not always been the case. And so I would say that NRECA and G&Ts, distribution co-ops across the nation, they're clearly the leaders on this beneficial electrification effort.
I've actually heard that some co-ops, G&Ts, and statewides are either creating new positions or changing existing positions within their staff to include beneficial electrification in their titles. So they're getting pretty serious about this. Talk about why this is so important, why this movement is important, and what's at stake.
I would say that a lot of our distribution co-ops were lamenting the idea that their energy sales were flat or going down. And that's not good for any business to see their sales going down. Now, and I say this with some understanding and experience, for the first time in many, many years, co-ops can grow their sales, and they can do it with their heads held high because they're selling electricity that's clean and green, and that it's affordable, and that it's good for the consumer and good for the grid and good for the climate. Another one is just the idea that you look at co-ops across the nation and you look at where is their energy coming from today as compared to, say, 10 or 15 years ago. Goodness, there's a lot of distribution co-ops, a lot of G&Ts where a lot of their electricity now is coming from these clean resources. And so while that's really, really great and you ought to shout that from the rooftops, you ought to at the same time be shouting from the rooftops that let's use this electricity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and so on. And so the idea that distribution co-ops and G&Ts are putting positions in place or changing the names of positions to beneficial electrification makes good sense to me because we're electrifying parts of our economy now in a way that's beneficial.
And as chair of the Beneficial Electrification League, do you have an ultimate goal in mind? Do you have a scenario in mind where you can say, okay, our work is done, or this is what we had in mind?
I look at it in terms of our work is not anywhere near being done, but I do see that our work is really getting this word out to all the utilities, not just the co-ops, but all utilities, all electric utilities, around this idea that electrifying certain end uses is going to be good for the climate and good for the consumer. The other thing that I'm intrigued with is how electric utilities, cooperatives can do things on the grid to make it more efficient and more effective. The idea that if we're going to have a lot of renewables, wind and solar, it might make good sense to have smart appliances in the home that can kind of use energy when it's abundantly available and maybe use less energy when it isn't so available. This dynamic load curve, if you will. Now, consumers don't want to hear about load curves, and they don't know what a load curve is probably, but utilities do. And as we get more and more renewables, the idea of being able to better manage your load curve is using electricity in a beneficial fashion. And so these positions within G&Ts and distribution co-ops, these positions that are called beneficial electrification, I think they have an incredible future ahead of them.
Well, Gary, I want to thank you for coming on. The way you describe things and the way you explain things is extremely understandable, and it's actually a harder concept for people to get than you would think. So I appreciate you coming on and helping us kind of get a better handle on this.
Well, my pleasure, Scott. I enjoy it.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear about how the Beneficial Electrification League plays out on the ground in its Colorado chapter. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Support for Along Those Lines comes from NRTC, who believes that delivering broadband and smart grid solutions for electric cooperatives begins with listening to your technology challenges and opportunities, your goals, and your unique service area. NRTC is with you from evaluation through implementation and to daily operations. That's why electric cooperatives created NRTC. While technology changes, NRTC's mission and focus remains on you. To learn more, visit nrtc.coop.
I'm Payne Sleeper from Alcorn County Electric Power Association in Corinth, Mississippi. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back. The country's first Beneficial Electrification League chapter was started in Colorado at Tri-State G&T. We caught up with Tri-State's new CEO, Duane Haley, at our Tech Advantage Conference and Expo earlier this year. Duane, thanks for being on the podcast.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tri-State started the first Beneficial Electrification League chapter in Colorado. What did you see that made you want to get in, and how did that process go in terms of setting it up?
So this is really part of our overall responsible energy plan, which has a number of elements. But a lot of that was spurred on by the legislation that passed in 2019 in both New Mexico and Colorado. So New Mexico had a 50% RPS by 2030. Colorado said we want to have 50% decarbonization economy-wide by 2030, but we want the utilities to step up and do something more like 80% decarbonization. So
and when you say RPS, you mean renewable portfolio, right?
Yes, renewable portfolio standard. So we knew we were going to be changing the portfolio mix of our energy on the grid, but along with that, the rest of the economy has to change too, especially in Colorado with this economy-wide rule. The transportation sector is going to have to be cleaned up and changed. So it's kind of like a two-step process, two very simple steps. Number one, decarbonize the grid, simple step. Simple step number two is electrify everything else.
When you decided to get involved in the Beneficial Electrification League, what was the first thing you did?
Yeah, so Ellen Connor on our staff had been working with NRECA and was aware of this overall national effort on beneficial electrification and a concept of a national beneficial electrification league, but really no state chapters. And so we hosted an event we called Electrify Colorado and invited some of the environmental NGOs to join us. We had National Resources Defense Council, NRDC, and Rocky Mountain Institute, RMI, and immediately found out that we all had the same common interest here. So parties that would normally be working against one another in terms of the fuel portfolio mix were great allies with us in terms of transitioning the rest of the economy to a non-carbon future.
Yeah. This issue seems to have transcended a lot of things that might have ordinarily divided the parties involved. Why is this issue so different?
Well, this is an area where we have a common interest. Again, if we can decarbonize the electric grid and make it cleaner, then that means everything else that's fueled by electricity has a smaller carbon footprint. And then take those items that would normally be fossil fueled and convert them to electric. And we just find that we have complete allies in this role when we talk about the transportation and mobility sector. So much need there and so much opportunity.
Yeah. Tri-State is a generation and transmission cooperative. Your interests in this issue are different from a distribution co-op. Talk a little bit about how that plays in, where you lead from, and the kind of things that you'll be doing as part of this engagement.
From the G&T perspective, we've got this mission to decarbonize not just our portfolio, but again, because of the state's interests, the rules that are being passed, to decarbonize the entire economy. And so we can be part of that. We can be a beneficial part of that by helping with transportation, with the residential sector, and there's so much opportunity there for heating and for cooking. And then the commercial sectors have enormous opportunity with forklifts and school buses and just a lot of areas where it not only works better for the member saves money, they have greater reliability, and that's great for the distribution co-op relationship. But from the G&T, we're going to be able to get credit when we talk about carbon reductions. If we can decarbonize the transportation sector, we can use that credit towards the goals we're achieving overall.
Right. And what are some of the steps you're going to be taking to decarbonize the transportation sector? Does this involve promoting EVs in a broad way? Does it involve creating charging stations, things like that?
Yeah, so in the case of Tri-State, the board has approved $2 million to go to our 42 members to go for local charging stations in areas where there's no charging infrastructure whatsoever. So if you're planning a cross-country road trip and you're going through the West, you're probably going through some Tri-State territory which would normally not have very much infrastructure for charging. If our members can place charging stations in those areas where it will provide an economic development boost, people are going to stop and people are going to charge.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the home appliance sector as well. Talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you'll be promoting in terms of getting appliances in the house, which appliances you're talking about, and getting those into the homes of your members.
So one of the great things now has just been the development of lower temperature air-to-air heat pumps, air source heat pumps, which normally would not perform well in cold climates. And again, in Tri-State in the Mountain West, we've got a lot of higher elevation, low temperature areas, and now we're seeing heat pumps that can perform well at -5. So that allows people who would not have had access to that to, again, move away from a fossil fuel to a very efficient heating appliance. That's one item. And another would be just induction cooktops. So in a lot of communities now, as they're having local sustainability goals, they're actually outlawing the ability to add any gas into a home. So what do you do for that foodie who really likes the controllability of natural gas? I mean, I'm one of those people. When I first heard about this, I'm like, don't take away my gas range. Whatever you do, I want to be able to turn that on and get immediate heat. But with the advent of induction cooking, which is not a new technology, you can have that immediate heat.
Yeah, they sound great. And as far as those kinds of initiatives go, what's your impression of that? Is it a good idea for municipalities to come in and say no more fossil fuel, or is the beneficial electrification side of this more, we want the consumer to have a choice that makes sense for them?
Well, I mean, we work for our members, and we want our members to have all the choices they can possibly have. So anytime that a governmental entity comes in and establishes rules, they're kind of picking winners and losers in advance. We prefer for our members to have everything available at their disposal. But frankly, these technologies actually offer lower costs for our members and better performance. So there's no reason why they shouldn't just go ahead and adopt.
Okay, so we talked about what got you into this issue. We talked about what you're doing now. Look in your crystal ball. Where is this going? Where is the technology going? Where is Tri-State's involvement and engagement in this going?
Well, so we're trying to respond to our members' desire for a cleaner grid and a cleaner overall economy. So we're going to, first of all, decarbonize the grid. Second of all, we're going to electrify everything we can, and that's how we're going to get there. So what's the role for the G&T there? Part of it is we're going to be conveners of these different groups, and we found so much common interest amongst the environmental NGOs, the communities themselves and community leaders. They're wanting to pass increasingly stringent sustainability goals. What's the path forward? They need a partnership with the G&T. They need a partnership with the power supplier to help make this happen. And we can be that convening force that helps bring this all together.
Yeah, I think you agree. It's not just the green side of it. There's also a consumer side where they're going to save money on a lot of these things.
Well, this is no longer a green movement. It's really an economic movement. Yeah. And when we look at it in every aspect, whether it's transportation, whether it's heating and cooling, whether it's cooking, it all results in higher performance and lower costs for the members.
Duane, that was great. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thanks as well to our sponsor, NRTC, and to you, our listeners. For more on this and other podcasts, visit us at electric.coop. Until next time, I'm Scott Hoffman.
I'm Maddie Kleiber from Salem Electric in Salem, Oregon. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.